Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the PIP form, which is a benefit here in the UK, and how to fill it out, how to fill the form out, tips and tricks that you can use in order to fill your form out better and make it so you're more likely to get your claim approved.
And trying to remain so strong, I know it's good if I'm alone. I got it,
When I say this, obviously I'm not via PIP. I don't know what PIP are going to say. I don't know kind of whether you're going to get your claim approved or denied, always bits and pieces, but these tips are just going to help you improve your chances. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is taking your time. So when you are doing your PIP claim and when you're filling it out, you don't have to fill the whole form out at once. I personally went to Citizens Advice. I went to them and I got some tips and some bits and pieces in terms of like what I could write, some questions, some advice, and if you would like some advice from myself in terms of like what Citizens Advice told me and what I learned through the process, then I will leave a video on the card whichever side it appears, and in that video I talk about questions that are like prompts that could help you answer the PIP questionnaire if you're applying for mental health reasons. So under the fact of taking your time, you could take your time in terms of you could do it over a long extended period of time, but if you do struggle to sit and focus for a long period of time, do it over several time periods. Obviously just be careful as to when your deadline is to return it and things like that, and obviously allow time for the postage. If you are going to go over the time, then make sure that you ring PIP and you let them know. My second tip is to include as much information as possible, even if it sounds obvious. So something that is obvious to you in your condition might not be obvious to the person that is reading your form. The person that's reading your form may sit there and think, well, does she do this? Or might have questions that are unanswered when they read your form. And yes, they probably should ask you that in your assessment, but sometimes the person who does your assessment is different to the person who reads your form, and so the two can get crossed sometimes, as far as I'm aware. So therefore I just think it's the best way to kind of just put as much information as possible, even if it's like on a bad day I can do this, on a good day I can do this, or even stating something as obvious as, so how much percent of your days are bad days, how much percent of your days are good days. Let's say for example that your good days and your bad days are an equal 50-50 split, and if they're an equal 50-50 split, mention that. So PIP are always going to look at the facts. They're going to look at the exact things that you've written on the form. They're not going to look at the unwritten stuff that may be obvious to you. So in that case, write about your bad days, mention your good days. I wouldn't like go into too much detail about your good days. You could say, on a good day I struggled to walk to the shops. On a bad day I really struggled to get out of bed, and this is because. You're always using the word because and using the reasons why, like you're stating the point, because otherwise people are going to go, okay, she struggles to get out of bed. Why is that? Is that because she's in pain, like physical pain, or is that because she's got depression, or is that because, you know, and because they've got these things unanswered, they're going to go, well, you know, I don't really know what to say here because there's not enough information on the form. So make sure you include as much information as possible. So my third bit of advice is to keep notes on your phone. So if you are going to be going in to, you know, sort of do a PIP form, or you're thinking about applying, make sure you keep a notes on your phone with dates, times, and what's happened at those events. These events could be blood tests, they could be other investigations like MRIs or CT scans, they could be anything from like just a normal checkup at the GP, they could be changes to medication and things like that. Include things with the medication, like what side effects does that give you? Like if you had a blood test, did you faint because like low blood sugars or something like that? Like include that in your form as well. Like, you know, if you don't eat for long periods of time, like you can faint. And in terms of GP appointments, they might have changed your medication. So if they change your medication, like what side effects and what was the reason for changing your medication? Like for example, did they change your medication because you were being really tired on this one and then you went to try this one to see whether, you know, this one provided a bit more kind of stability for you as well as less side effects? Like that is not going to be obvious to the person that's reading your form, so therefore it is important to kind of state that in your form. Another thing that is really important to kind of take note and to remember is, do you use any aids or equipment? These can be pieces of equipment that have been given to you like via the council, or these can be bits of equipment that you've brought. So for example, crutches, wheelchairs, walking sticks, mobility scooters, it can be bathrooms, shower seats, it can be kitchen stools that you have to sit down on to cook, or it could be even down to the fact that if you have to have easy open or adapted knives because you struggle with your grip, or any help, like if you struggle to always open a jar, like can you never open a jar, so therefore do you always have to get help from somebody else? Like any aids or help that you get from other people, make sure that you include that in the form as well. My next point I want to make is, if you are able to do this, is to get letters or like notes from family, friends, or like anyone that supports you. So that could be like, if you have a social worker, they could write a note. If your parents give you a lot of support, if you've got a friend who's like always around once a week giving you support. This could be down to like vouching for the fact they take you shopping because you wouldn't be able to get shopping otherwise. Like this could be down to the fact that, you know, they're taking you to work, or like, you know, it could be down to the fact they're taking you to appointments. Like for myself, I do work, I do have a job outside of YouTube, but I only work 10 hours maximum a week. So because of that, like I would struggle to do another job. Like I have actually tried. I have myself tried to do 2 jobs and to sort of work the equivalent of like 25 hours, I think it was. So not part-time, but also not full-time. So I tried to do that and I just couldn't. You know, my body just gave up on me. So I know my limits. I did test my limits and it didn't work. Also remember, if you have any physio appointments, if you have A&E discharge letters, if you've had any results from any investigations, make sure that you photocopy these and you include them. And that rolls on straight into my next point, is make sure that any letters or anything you send to PIP, you photocopy it and you send them the photocopies, because you won't get them back. It is important that if you need those, say if they're appointment letters or if they're test results, or if you just like filing everything like I do. I personally have a filing cabinet where I file every single piece of information. Otherwise I will forget about it. My memory's like a sieve, and I struggle to remember even the smallest and the most like significant of things that are going to happen in my life. The next thing that is so vitally important, if you take anything away from this video, the most important thing that you need to do is photocopy your completed PIP forms. Don't just send it off and then like not have a copy yourself. This can be really helpful if you're going to go to any assessments, or if you have to go to tribunal. I myself had to go to tribunal. I had my tribunal throughout COVID, so therefore we weren't sent a copy of the forms, so it was really helpful that I'd photocopied the forms. I did an extra copy when I had the actual tribunal on the phone, because I was lucky enough to have my mum sitting there with me to help me, and in that case it was very helpful to have those forms in front of me to actually see what I'd written. And then before the tribunal, I was able to sort of post-it note and add things in, because obviously there's a time scale that has lapsed in between sort of you filling out the form and having a tribunal or an assessment. So it's very important to like annotate your form like as you go along if you can. If not, spend an hour or something before your tribunal or your assessment and like annotate your form so you don't forget anything, because if you forget anything then it's really hard to add it in after an assessment or a tribunal. My last bit of advice in terms of the PIP form is to send it recorded delivery. Don't just think, oh, I'll send it second class, it will get there, it's fine. Send it recorded delivery. It doesn't have to be like tracked and like signed and all bits and pieces. Just make sure that you've got evidence that it has arrived at the PIP location. You don't want you can get it signed if you want to. I did mine signed because I think it was like tracked and signed at the time, but like you can, I think there's one option on Royal Mail second delivery where you can like just get it tracked and it will track it and then it will be registered as delivered, and that's pretty much all that you want. You just want to have it registered as delivered, otherwise PIP could turn around and they could say, oh, we didn't receive it, or we haven't had it yet, you need to fill it out again and, you know, send it in to us again. And I had that problem when I applied for my driving license again, and I forgot to like send it recorded delivery, and because of that I had to end up sending it again, which delayed my application. And obviously when it's down to benefits, or it's down to anything that's important that you need to in order to survive financially, physically, like you know you need to be able to start learning to drive or whatever, you know, those sort of things are really important to make sure that you go ahead and like photocopy it, send it recorded delivery, and then if for whatever reason it doesn't get delivered or it doesn't get signed for, you've then got a photocopy that you can then photocopy again and you can send off again. Like photocopying is my most important tip in this whole video. So that is it for today's video. If you would like to know more about PIP and some information about like having to be able to apply for it, I did have my other video that was really good and did go into a lot of detail and broke down the questions. Then please click on the end screen for the card and you'll be able to click into that video. But thank you very much for watching, and don't forget that I believe in you even if nobody else does.
Just like you're young again, no, don't you cry. Just get back up again.